Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Alice Lee. I'm a holistic psychiatrist, child, adolescent, and adult psychiatrist practicing in Lehi, Utah. Today, I wanted to cover one of my favorite subjects, which is creative freedom. And I wanted to talk about the art and science of creative freedom and how we can bring greater creative freedom and therefore more happiness and joy into our lives. As a holistic psychiatrist, I have helped a lot of people overcome many obstacles that interfere with their ability to really manifest their full potential and to be the creative people that they truly are. In my own life as well, I found that this was one of my themes in my life to develop more creative freedom in my life, overcoming a lot of belief systems and mindsets that might hold me back in truly being my full authentic self. I think creative freedom is a foundation to joy and happiness. It's really important for us to help ourselves and others to develop that so that they can create and be joyful and happy in their lives. I was thinking about this whole idea of happiness and joy that everybody wants so much in their lives, and I was feeling that even before we can really truly be happy and joyful, the most important aspect of living is being free. The more we feel free and empowered in our lives, I feel the more that we have an opportunity to really live joyful lives. I don't think of happiness and joy as something that we find. I don't think it's something that we can buy or take as a medication or find at the bottom of a bottle or inject into ourselves or in any way create artificially. I don't think of joy and happiness as being anything separate than who we are. And it's very important for us as we develop ourselves to become the kind of people whose energies, mindsets, physical health will allow us to experience joy and happiness when those moments arise in our lives that are appropriate for those emotions to occur. So whenever I think about any subject, I'm always thinking about how to look at it from 5 different angles. And those 5 different angles are spiritual, mental, emotional, physical, and social. I just want to go over these 5 different areas so you can kind of think about creative freedom from a holistic psychiatrist perspective. So I always like to start with the spiritual first because I feel that the spiritual aspect of our lives is the biggest umbrella. So in our lives, there are many things that are very ephemeral, very temporal. Sometimes we might be in a state of financial abundance. Other times we might worry about our financial viability. Sometimes we have friends, and other times our friends betray us or desert us. So the circumstances in our lives are always shifting, always challenging us. And I think that if we have a very strong bedrock in what I call spiritual well-being, it can help us weather through the many different storms of life. And what I mean by spirituality, and I apply this to anyone, whether you're affiliated with a church or a religion, or whether you might be atheist, but I believe spirituality has a lot to do with our connection to some of these abstract qualities that we value in life. So those things might be love, peace, truth, harmony, goodness, mercy. All of these qualities are kind of spiritual in nature. They're spiritual because it's not something that you can go out to a grocery store and buy or something that you can take from a bottle. They're things that has to be a part of you or you don't have it. So when it comes to spirituality, I find that in my life, I do find great comfort in understanding that everyone is connected to a beautiful and infinite source of what I call life energy. What I mean by that is you can think of life energy as that very energy that powers us without us having to work at it, such as our ability to digest food or our heart rate and the way our heart and cardiovascular system might serve us without having us to think about it. So when I think about spirituality, I think about this invisible force that's always there behind us, that has our back and loves us and wants us to succeed. This belief in and trust in that ultimate resource, I think, is very real in my practice, because I demonstrate it to my patients. When they are using their minds to connect to that source, I notice that I can show them and demonstrate that their whole body is enlightened and stronger. When their minds are connected to maybe a different channel, a channel of fear, or a channel where they're worried about finances, or a channel where they're connecting to a traumatic event, their energy will shift and it will get weaker, and it shows up in some of the tests that I'm able to demonstrate for my patients. So this idea of connecting to an infinite source is kind of like being able to step out of our daily lives, the lives that we're used to in our physical daily walk, and be able to understand that beyond that, there's a resource for us that is really positive in its energy source. So when I was going through some really rough times in my life, I found myself reaching towards that source to affirm life. I remember one of my friends walking in my house, and this friend noticed I had a very large collection of books on near-death experiences, and he thought of me as an expert on near-death experiences, which I don't think of myself as an expert at all, but I did have a nice collection of books on near-death experiences. And I remember that I gathered them at a time in my life when I was going through very difficult medication withdrawal in the 1990s. And I reached out to these books to remind myself that there is a realm beyond our physical lives, and that we are loved, and that we are beings of light and spirit. So when it comes to creative freedom, I think what we're trying to do is to understand ourselves on a very existential level, our purpose for this life that we're living. Why do we experience some of the challenges that we've experienced, and how can they be turned into a positive learning experience for us? When we can think about our lives from that kind of like a bigger perspective, many things can shift. So for example, when I went through some of the difficult times with medication withdrawal, I was not clear as to why that could be of use to me in my life. And now, as a holistic psychiatrist, I have come to understand that without that experience, I really wouldn't be able to have the empathy or desire to help people who struggle with their psychiatric medication withdrawals. Nor would I be able to help them come off of it safely, because there wouldn't be this persevering motivation and drive over the years to find an answer for them. So our experiences are there, I think, for a purpose, and it's helpful in terms of our journey for gathering creative freedom to be able to discover or understand that not all suffering is a waste of our time or our lives, that those experiences are there to kind of draw our attention to certain themes or certain issues in our lives that are very important for us to focus on. In terms of our spiritual growth, I think one of the biggest factors for creative freedom is compassion. And it may be hard to kind of connect the dots between compassion and creative freedom, but I think compassion is based upon this unconditional love for ourselves and others. And when we want to experience creative freedom, we're really searching for something that maybe other people, or even within our secular or social situation, nobody is really able to help us with. But we have to be loving enough towards ourselves and towards others that we allow them to develop and grow into their authentic self. And that sometimes means a lot of courage, a lot of effort, and it cannot happen without that foundation of love. Love for yourself, maybe love for your family members. When we really want creative freedom for each other, we are really loving each other enough to allow ourselves to truly be authentic and live our highest purpose. And that purpose may be different for each individual. And their life course might be very different in terms of what we want for them or imagine for them. And so in being individuals, not only for ourselves and others that can create freedom for others, we need to allow ourselves to be free, to love ourselves unconditionally. The second thing is the mental aspect. So there's the spiritual, the mental, and for creative freedom, when I think about the mental aspects of developing creative freedom, I'm really thinking about belief systems, conditioned responses, and limitations that we set upon ourselves. So one of the things, for example, that has a broad application in my practice is how the labels, the diagnostic labels given to patients can limit them in terms of their belief in themselves, their self-confidence, what they define themselves as. So when we think about creative freedom, part of my healing process for my patients is to go beyond those labels, to help them to gain self-esteem and to help them to think of themselves differently, to try new things, to start to think of themselves as being empowered versus being small and being helpless. A lot of times I resort to some of my energy healing tools. So, for example, one of my favorites on my website, and you can find it under the information tab. And if you go to the information tab and then you look for energy medicine techniques, you'll be able to find a lot of my favorite techniques there. But one of the techniques that I use is called Empower Energy Technique, EET. I just call it EET. And Empower Energy Technique is a really simple affirmation, basically. But it has all of the qualities that are important and are part of the bigger technique called Infinite Intention Technique. So Infinite Intention Technique is this big umbrella of a technique. It uses a lot of different components that make it very powerful. And Empower Energy Technique is just a subset. It's a very small application of the Infinite Intention Technique. The Empower Energy Technique allows people to set certain intentions. You just stick it into a paragraph, and it allows them to change their energy state. It helps them to unblock things, to bring better energy into their system. It just helps them to speed up the healing process when it comes to belief systems and mindsets. A recent experience that I had with a patient who is a musician is that we created a bunch of statements for her using the EET that was really helpful for enhancing her creativity. So just to give you an example of creative freedom in terms of how we applied it for this individual who wanted to develop her creative talents in music, we used some EET intentions. And let me just explain what EET is. It's just a simple paragraph and it goes like this. I now choose to be one with life energy as a wave is one with the ocean. And let me just describe what life energy is. Life energy is that idea of perfect energy. It's an infinite source of energy that is filled with infinite and unconditional love, peace, joy, truth, creativity, strength, harmony, balance, goodness, mercy, forgiveness, health, wholeness, purity, abundance, and even space and time. So all of these wonderful qualities, as well as many others, is what I think of as descriptive of this infinite source of life energy. So we use this idea of life energy in all of the infinite intention techniques. And with the EET, it begins with, I now choose to be one with life energy as a wave is one with the ocean, and be empowered to, and then you stick the statement in there that it is that you want to enhance or heal, or to release if it's a problem. And then you end with, I completely and gratefully accept healing energy at all levels of being and through space and time from life energy to create and achieve this healing process. I embrace the positive shifts that occur as I heal and release the beliefs, emotions, habits, fears, pain, traumas, and other blockages that prevent me from receiving all the energy I need to heal and empower my life at all levels of being, now and through space and time. Okay, so that's the technique itself. And what we did with this individual is that we stuck in there 4 different types of 4 different statements. So she did them separately, but then you can also do them like 1 through 4 and then go on to the end of the paragraph. So that's been very helpful as an energetic intervention. So the first one that we used was to enjoy. So it says, I now choose to be one with life energy as a wave is one with the ocean, and be empowered to enjoy and be easily inspired when I work on my project. And she had a fellowship project that she was working on. The second one that we chose to help her with is to be free from the inhibitions, fears, and blockages that would undermine my imagination, creativity, authenticity, voice, and inspiration. Number 3, have the confidence and self-assurance to be true to my art and fearlessly chart new ways to express myself through music and voice. And the fourth one that we created for her is create opportunities to have friendships that are fun, meaningful, and aligned with my artistic nature. So all of these different intentions were used with that particular technique to enhance her creative freedom and her creative empowerment. So you can see that as an example of mental blockages, that sometimes we keep ourselves from being truly creative or even being free and authentic because we have mindsets, beliefs, certain things that says, no, you can't go here, or oh, I'm afraid to go there. I'm afraid to try something new. This will be something that's too hard for me, or I've never done it before, so I can't do it now. All of those different things can be addressed through this simple technique using EET, and I would really encourage you to explore it and see if it would work for you as well. It's been really helpful for all my patients in terms of helping them overcome trauma, helping them to be more creative, and overcoming even functional physical problems that they struggle with, such as medication withdrawal. The next area that I wanted to talk about in terms of establishing creative freedom is our emotional levels of being. So sometimes we have conditioned emotional responses to some things that keep us from going beyond our ideas of ourselves and being able to really live our lives authentically in a way that brings us greater joy and enrichment and success. So, for example, in terms of the fears and conditioned responses, a lot of them come from our childhood. For example, self-esteem is oftentimes a reflection of how we see ourselves mirrored through our parents, through our friends, through our early childhood experiences, perhaps in school or at church or maybe in a club. Sometimes these early experiences, because we're so young, we're very vulnerable, we can't filter them out. And so they settle into our energies, into our belief systems, and into our emotional lives. Sometimes these childhood experiences, because we're so young, we can't filter them, we end up just seeing the world through those filters. Even before we think that we're consciously analyzing a situation, the filter has already colored our world. And it's really important for us to heal at the subconscious level. I would encourage, again, the use of energy medicine to help at the subconscious level. So some of you might know about emotional freedom technique, where you combine acupressure points with intention work. That works really well for those people who want to try that technique. There's logosynthesis, which is a great technique. I like my infinite intention technique and the EET that I use in my practice. So what are some of these emotional blockages to our creative freedom? Sometimes I think because of our beliefs, our emotions are there to kind of protect us from danger or failure or anything that we believe ourselves to be stepping into when we try something new. So any kind of change, anything that's new, can feel a little bit threatening for us as we expand ourselves and try to really be free to be able to express ourselves fully. These fears, anxieties can be, like I said, conditioned from our early childhood. For example, one of the things that happen with a lot of people is that they might want something, but they don't feel that they deserve it. That is something that conditions people to work really hard for something, but as you approach that successful culmination of all your work, the subconscious might find ways to sabotage you. One of the things, for example, that can interfere with our emotional ability to handle new situations and to be actually successful in achieving what we want is that we're conditioned to feel that we're not deserving of really accessing the final prize that we've been working for. This feeling of not deserving, I think, is rooted in a sense of guilt, feelings that maybe we weren't good enough to deserve it, that we're not lovable enough, that we've made mistakes in the past, and therefore, being imperfect, we don't deserve to be successful in whatever pursuits we have. That's, again, something that's very common. Even amongst therapists who come to my office, I will test them and they will be strong with, I want to be loved or I want to be well. But when I energy test them, they'll go weak with, I deserve to be well or I deserve to be loved. So it's rooted in a lot of guilt and self-hatred, self-doubt, and feelings of anxiety about really stepping up and showing your light. It's true that sometimes it's so much easier for us to talk about our faults and our weaknesses than it is for us to shine our light and say, look at me, this is what I do, this is what I do well. It's very hard for people to allow themselves to speak and express their voice, which is part of being creative and being free. And again, subconscious healing is needed to help people overcome their traumas that make them believe that they have to be perfect before they can really reach for what it is that they want. The fourth aspect of creative freedom is, of course, our physical health, which is just as important as any other aspect of our lives. So when it comes to creative freedom, it's really important for our physical bodies to be also raised in terms of its level of function, to be at a place where you have energy, where your mind can be clear, where you can focus, where you can persevere with your concentration, where your physical health is not blocked by medications that block you from feeling your emotions. All of these different things must also be a part of one's healing process in order for someone to be truly creative and truly free. One of the things that I hear a lot about from my patients who come off their mood stabilizers, it's a very common medication used for bipolar patients who have very high highs and very low lows, is that the medication had in some ways leveled their moods out so much that they couldn't cry, they couldn't feel joy, and they're just always feeling kind of an even, flat, numbed state emotionally. So as a holistic psychiatrist, when I help people try to be their best, one of the things that I often do is start with the basics of nutrition, whether it's with their smoothies, vitamins and minerals, some antioxidants, maybe it might be some anti-inflammatories. These are the basic ingredients that our bodies are lacking and require in order for it to function. Instead of going from the symptoms and hopping right to the medications, which is often common in psychiatry, my first step for most people is to go from their symptoms to trying some natural interventions or holistic interventions. For the majority of my patients, if they're not on medications, that's all they need. They just need support nutritionally. It's almost like if a plant was wilting, it doesn't have sun, it doesn't have water, doesn't have any fertilizer. If you just give it some water and sunshine and fertilizer, the plant will just kind of revive. And that's how we are physically. We need these nutrients. We need natural interventions that are very powerful in helping turn our moods around and helping our energy increase to more optimal levels. For a lot of my patients, though, they've been on meds for years before they discovered a practice like mine. And so when they come in, they've been on medications maybe for 20, 30 years, and they've been on an antidepressant and anticonvulsant and maybe antipsychotic or anxiolytic. All these different medications are there as emotional crutches, so that they are relying on them in order to function from day to day. And nobody wants to be enslaved to their medications and be stuck with a daily regimen where you're constantly, I have to remember to take my medications, or once a month I need to go to the pharmacy to get these medications. Everybody wants to just be well naturally without having to be tied to an apron string to a psychiatrist. And that's my goal for my patients as well. And I find it very, for me, a joy when my patients are well enough to not see me anymore. So that's what I feel on the physical level is really missing in mental health, is the awareness of the power of natural intervention, holistic interventions that can help us to be physically healthy enough to be free from all of the expenses, the time, and even the diagnostic labels that cause us to feel limited and strapped to a whole medical system. Finally, let's talk about the last aspect, which is just as important for our creative freedom, and which is the social energy state. In this area, we're really thinking about social opportunities, environmental influences. It really encompasses our childhood family setting, our school system. There are many times people come to me having experienced severe bullying as a child that created, for example, for them a downward slope with anxiety and depression, and that's how they got started with antidepressants or anxiolytics even in their early teens or even in elementary school. So I think that environmentally, sometimes we're up against a lot of challenges that interfere with our ability to truly be free. And it's important for us to really examine these environmental stressors, because these environmental stressors are oftentimes present in our lives through no choice of our own. It may be something that we're born into. So as you become invested in your own creative freedom, it's really important for you to work on yourself internally, help your own health to improve enough to be able to examine how to let go or to improve and bring and attract into your life those positive influences that will really help us to be our best self. One of the things that I've found very important is to kind of shed ideas of what I should be based upon social and environmental messages. So in medicine, in the social interactions in terms of some of the stereotypes for women, in terms of some of the expectations of people who are Asian, or stereotypes for people who are Asian. And even in the past, as I've been very deeply involved in my religion as an LDS member of the church, there are many different expectations about what is normal and what is okay and what is not okay. So one of the things that allows us to be truly free is to be able to kind of step back and just look at these different influences and just understand that in spite of all of these different influences, we need to pick and choose those that support who we want to be authentically and creatively, something that supports our freedom to express ourselves and to be able to allow our voice to be aligned with what is in our hearts and in our minds. So as I've kind of developed over the course of my life, that's what I did. I've kind of examined all of the different influences that has been a part of my life, and I either developed certain ones that allowed them to flourish, or I had to let go of others that I felt was in conflict with my own belief system. All of these different things are important for my patients as I'm working with them to help them to truly be able to maintain their wellness after they get off their medications. So a lot of times psychiatrists focus on biology. We focus on neurochemistry within biology, and we kind of like put on blinders to all of the other influences that really makes a person whole, complete, and happy. In holistic psychiatry, however, what I found is that if I were just to focus on a person's biology, even if I were an expert when it comes to nutrition, glandular support, hormonal support, antioxidant support, it really doesn't matter. If I just focus on the biology of a person and didn't really pay attention to support the healing of a person's mindset, their emotional well-being, I didn't help them to heal their social environment, it's very difficult for that individual to maintain their state of wellness, because they may be healed physically, but all of their patterns, their mindset, create additional cycles of worry, anxiety, fear, limitations. And someone in that kind of state just recreates the physical components of unhappiness, and that will eventually lead them to too much stress, and then eventually maybe back to medications. So it's really important, as I'm helping my patients to develop creative freedom, that I look at all of these different aspects of their health, their spiritual, mental, emotional, physical, and social states of well-being. Together, each one is just as important as another aspect of their healing process. It's not like one is more important than the other. So with all of these different aspects of them being healed, a person can then move off and be free from their medications, and then just start to create a really magnificent, authentic life and never have to call me again. So this is just a very short synopsis, I believe, of what I think of when I think of creative freedom. I'm sure after this video, I'm going to think of a million other points that I've left out, but you can get a sense of what we need as human beings to let go of, to grow and develop, or to enhance and attract into our lives in order to truly grow in our creative freedom. And I hope that by listening to my presentation today that you will also make a lot of headway and be able to really create that joyful state of being that could only happen through greater creative freedom. And I wish you well on that journey, and thank you so much for listening.